there.
You sure?
Yeah, definitely.
So?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, even though she's not my own sister. Brother.
No, we'll get to his house because I don't think he requires to text after that.
Always.
Did you lay? Yeah, I know you just want to sit covered, didn't you?
I want one of those.
Sorry.
Yeah, to get to the shop, yeah, I know. Yeah.
For the chat. Event.
Yeah, you've got to sign a contract to say for 4 years.
Yes.
Old record, they would be better off.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know about this.
registration for the PTA, you know. And then there was nothing for
I mean, we said about
turning around.
No, that's Claire. No, Ellie, Да.
did, yes.
ran through stuff like that. It's just a joke. He runs such
You're not playing anymore.
That's interesting.
going out into the out over there.
I feel bad.
And they were practicing putting up the sails. Oh, that's probably
amaze me.
Okay.
Well, I'm
fine.
there.
It's so easy to fall out.
I'm happy if you want it.
Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, very nice. All over the place.
Just about got through Christmas and that. Good boy.
Hurt now. So high.
Yeah, but we're going home now because Tanya needs to get in the car with Mabel. She might still need a wee, some water, cup of tea.
Oh, you got bogies. I don't want you up there. You've got bogies. What's that?
camera.